Hey guys, this is Christopher Sneed with another episode of American High Road, where we just talk about things and sort of if you will, have a philosophical thought or two about issues going on in the world, or maybe a different way to look at things, all with the intent of just making the world a little better, maybe laughing a little bit, maybe relaxing, maybe just making you think. All of these are great things. While some of my episodes may be more on the political side, this episode will be a little bit more lighthearted in that it's not about any particular issue. So, and if you read the title, which obviously you have, you know that we're talking about The Walking Dead. Is anyone still watching The Walking Dead? Anyone? I'm partially joking. It's still one of the highest rated shows on television. However, in recent years, I know that it has declined. I know after season 7's big Negan introduction and the death of some characters that a lot of people were turned off and they lost a lot of viewership. And that number has continued to decline. But if you were around in the heyday of The Walking Dead in seasons 1 through, let's say, 4, a lot of people... that was kind of when the show had the highest rated in America and was blowing everyone's mind. Some people did not like season 2. I was not one of those people. Season 2 is probably one of my favorites just because it dealt with the characters more. And I know that's not what everybody wanted out of it. Some people wanted more zombies. Some people wanted more action. But personally, I like having the zombies be the backdrop and to really focus on characters and how they get along and the intricacies of and dynamics of a group of people who probably wouldn't be together if it weren't for this tragedy, looking into how those people respond to each other. But what we're talking about today, if you were one of those people and are very familiar with seasons 1 through 4, this is for you. This doesn't so much apply to the first few seasons. But have you ever taken one of those quizzes that tells you what character you would be on a show? Like, which Golden Girl would you be? Which Game of Thrones character would you be? It's all some sort of personality test. Some are better than others. But with a show like The Walking Dead, this is a series that's loaded with diverse characters that are trying to survive the dangers of a post-zombie apocalypse. And identifying with one of them may be as easy as looking at 3 different types of survivors. And I categorize them as the dreamers, the realists, and the pioneers. Dreamers, realists, and pioneers. And by looking at those, we might be able to sort of identify who we are, who we want to be, and understand the importance of people in America in general and in the world. So the dreamers are the ones that are clinging to what was great about the past while also looking forward to the possibilities of the future. They're often the symbols of hope and optimism. They do not tend to last long, but they do leave on their own terms, unwilling to compromise their values. Dale, the character Dale, who was a retired RV owner from season 2. He was kind of a fan favorite, I think, through season 1. If you remember him, his probably his most significant relationship was with Andrea, in that he prevented her from committing suicide at the end of season 1. Now, before I go any further, if you have not seen The Walking Dead, there are going to be tons of spoilers in this, so keep that in mind. But the show's also in its 8th or 9th season, so you're kind of behind the times. But anyway, Dale was also kind of the voice of reason on the show, older gentleman. And he had a line that said, the world we knew is gone, but keeping our humanity, that's a choice. Now, that's a very significant line, because he's acknowledging that what they had isn't there. What the way things used to be are no longer. But in his dialogue, you get a sense that he can see that there's hope for getting that back. That there's some thread, some tie to that. The Dale character falls into that category of dreamers. He sought to preserve compassion and integrity, regardless of the changing landscape. Whether it is, we look at somebody like Beth, who was not necessarily an overall favorite, but she had some pretty diehard fans, especially towards the end of her character's run on the show. Beth, sang songs to reminisce about good times on the family farm. You had Tyrese, who is sort of a gentle giant persona that rejects killing other humans. And then there was Andrea, who was probably one of the least liked characters by most people. I actually loved the character. I loved her arc. And I understood her more than some of the other characters. She made a lot of mistakes, but what characters don't? And some of her mistakes were huge. But, she was the tortured optimist who thinks that she can stop everyone from dying at the end. When Rick's group was going up against Woodbury with the governor, she was an optimist. It might not have been realistic what she was thinking, but she was a dreamer, and she had visions of both groups eventually coming to some sort of harmonious conclusion. These characters, Tyrese, Beth, Andrea, these are characters who believe in something that doesn't exist. Their faithful outlook carries noble qualities that, in truth, need to be protected. These are the things that we all ultimately want. We all ultimately want peace. We all ultimately want to be surrounded by our loved ones and live in, a rainbow and unicorn environment. And not that that's, we don't think that way now. A lot of us don't think that way because we know that won't get us anywhere, or we feel like that won't get us anywhere. So, you hear people say that sometimes, life isn't rainbows and unicorns. No, it's not. But why isn't it? It's not just because of natural things like death, but because of other bad people in the world. But we also want to strive to get as close to that as possible, I think. And if we don't have dreamers who think of those things, I feel like we'll lose it. And I think we see some of that now, the way we treat dreamers, the way we treat people who are looking beyond what is. And those people are there to remind us that things can be better. Those are the people that have the imagination to look beyond our current woes and struggles. Now, so often, these qualities that I'm talking about that the dreamers possess is protected by the realist. Giving up on the past and not worrying about the future, this group of the realists react mostly to the present, to the way things are. Ultimately, they accept things as they are, choosing to simply survive the moment. The best examples are probably, I would say, Carol and Daryl. Carol is a domestic violence survivor who struggled with her habit of killing as the only solution to most conflicts. In season 4, I think, or it's one of the seasons at the prison, she killed 2 sick people in an effort to stop a deadly flu from spreading, but it didn't work. And Daryl was raised in the country knowing how to hunt and live off of whatever he finds. He works fine on his own or in a team. He's often been referred to as Rick, the leader, his right hand, because he's able to follow orders or respond to threats without hesitation. Now, in season 7, he killed an unarmed member of a group that had kidnapped him, even though the man was willing to let him go. And characters like Michonne, Rosita, Dwight, they react quickly to what's happening now. And more often than not, most fans are supporters of these characters because these characters get all the action. Like, they seem to get things done. Now, if you actually look at it, what do they get done? Carol has done She saved her group certainly plenty of times, but she's also made some horrible mistakes, least of which not paying attention to what violence was doing to one of the sisters, Lizzie, the one who kind of lost her mind and was keeping zombies as pets. So, with every step forward, there were always a step back with their reactions, because they aren't people who wait around. They're people who do things, but they do get things done. They do react. They do have action. And so that's a good quality to have too, but not necessarily on its own. Daryl, just to go back to him, he's also the one who reacted. People loved that character, like deeply loved that character up until season 7, when he punched Negan during their first meeting, when Negan had them all lined up for the infamous bat scene. And Daryl's the reactor, he's the realist. In that moment, at that time, he was reacting to the reality of the situation. The reality of the situation was that Negan was torturing his friends. Negan was hurting people, and he just reacted. And that's what realists do. They are going to look at what's happening, and they're going to react to that. And that's it. No past, no future, just right now. They do not guide the future or have a long-term plan beyond existing, which is way different than the pioneers. Now, pioneers are always at the forefront of change, whether good or bad. They are dreamers, but who create their own reality. Now, characters like Rick, and this still applies to him even now in these current seasons, Rick will sacrifice some of his values to see a vision come to life. On more than one occasion, he's killed when he didn't want to. He stabbed his best friend who had grown violently unhinged, and I'm talking about Shane, if you remember that. Of course you remember that. That was dumb, but it was like one of the pinnacle early moments of the series. But after he only did this, though, he only killed Shane after all the other options had been exhausted. Like, he had tried to reason with him. He had tried to deal with the reality as it was. And when that didn't work, he had to change. He had to process it differently. And so he stabbed his best friend. A more extreme example might be King Ezekiel. He has all the optimism and imagination of a dreamer, with his royal court and his the way he interacts, the having the tiger, which sadly is no longer around, but choosing to have knights and a throne and all of that. Yet he had the leadership skills to create a safe haven known as the kingdom that protects his community from very real dangers. So there's a great example of someone who has merged the dreamer qualities of what life could be, or what life used to be, and what can we bring, what are we protecting from that, how do I want the world to be. But at the same time, he's dealing with everything that's happening right now, with the imagination to deal with what's happening right now. Now, other examples might include, the governor who created the Woodbury, and although inside Woodbury was not reflective of what was happening outside of Woodbury, what the rest of the world was struggling with, he did create this environment. He had the imagination to create a safe haven, much like King Ezekiel. Somewhat of a safe haven. Even though he was a villain, he still had leadership skills and was able to deal with threats and people and things as they were in that moment. Maggie's another one, who's even more so now, probably in these later seasons. And then, of course, Negan, who's very much like the governor, creating his own rules, creating his own laws, breeding them out of what he imagines, out of what he's created, out of nothing. He sees the world as it is, and he's dreaming about how he wants it to be, and he's trying to find a connection between those two. Now, they've all these characters, the governor, Maggie, Rick, Negan, they've all influenced their situation to protect themselves and others. So these three groups provide like a basic philosophy, choosing either to fantasize about what could be, like the dreamers, accepting the current situations as they are, like the realist, or create the best possible scenario that they can imagine, like the pioneers. The dreamers, the realists, and the pioneers all serve different purposes, and all of these purposes are valid. That's the thing, is we look at people in the world who we think, oh, that's kind of a Beth character. It's what is she providing? She's not out on the front lines fighting. She doesn't have these amazing skills of seduction or prowess with a weapon or anything. But without those characters, what are we protecting? Innocence, virtue, character, honesty, simplicity, even. These are things that we're supposed to be striving towards. These are the things that are supposed to make us better people and make us enjoy life more. And those characters kind of get picked on a lot. They kind of get dismissed. And I think they do that in real life too, so often. But then there's the realist who can get a bad rap as well. Even though they may react right now and it's all about survival as opposed to thriving, these characters are hardcore doers. I mean, they're people, they'll never be leaders. They're not good people who can really lead, because they don't have the imagination or the problem solving skills to know what to react to and when, to be able to think quickly and come up with a scenario that has the least amount of bloodshed, or think through things in such a way that they feel good about their decisions later. I mean, Carol has done many things that she felt bad about. She kept the death book, the book of all the people that she killed, keeping a tally of how many people she's killed. And maybe if she had been more of a pioneer, she had a little bit more of the imagination of the dreamers, she could have made decisions that wouldn't have affected her so roughly. But you still need these characters. That's not a bad thing. They just aren't leaders. They aren't the people that need to be making the decisions. They don't have enough of their life in check. They don't have enough. They just don't think that way. So, but they serve their purpose. And pioneers, of course, they serve their purpose in real life. These are our people like probably John McCain, or maybe some of our inventors, our great scientists, the creator of the television, the young man, I can't think of it, Farnsworth, the young boy in high school. I mean, he was in high school when he essentially invented television. He's the grandfather of television. I think that's his title. But he's somebody who was a pioneer because he knew what the world was. He wasn't just off in La La Land, just daydreaming all the time. He was someone who took reality and then used that to apply to a dream he had about sending images through waves. That is an example of a pioneer. And we need those people because that's how we progress, that's how we become better, and these are the people that lead the realists and the dreamers. So anyway, but with all that in mind, the pioneers, the realists, the dreamers, which character do you think you are? How do you approach living? Are you someone who sits and daydreams all the time, and you talk about the way the world should be, and how we could get there? Or are you someone who's more of a realist, that you just go to work and do your thing. You deal with the threat as it comes. If you get a past due notice in the mail, you deal with it then. And you just react to it, and you feel like you're somebody who responds better to pressure. Maybe you are more of a realist, and if you're a pioneer or a leader, maybe you're that person who can juggle all of that. Parents are, I think, in a lot of ways, those pioneers, because they have to envision what their children will be like as they get older, and how to get to that point, how to get their children to become the people that they hope they will be. that they'll be their best version of themselves. And in order to do that, you have to be able to imagine what they will be like as adults, and then make decisions based on reality that get them to that place or get them close to that place. We all want our children to be highly successful and make a lot of money and be comfortable and marry someone they love, and hopefully, not that every parent's great, but parents are typically pioneers. They might not be creating television or light bulbs or taking over government seats or anything like that, but in their household, they are the pioneers. They're the ones paving the way and marrying what should be with what is. So leave me a comment. Let me know what you think about this and where you think you lie. Maybe I'm completely off base, and some of these characters are still this way now. And it's been an interesting show because of that. So if you're still watching, let me know what's going on, because I don't watch it anymore. But yeah, hopefully you enjoyed this little brief talk about The Walking Dead and life and philosophies. And if you have anything that you want to talk about, or questions, or anything, you can comment below, or you can send me an email, which the email is in the description, and I'd love to hear from you. And until next time, this has been American High Road.